Welcome, ladies, to the She Talks Period podcast. I'm your host, Sophie, and I am so excited for today's episode. So, I have my dear friend, Shekinah, who wears multiple hats. She's a therapist, an entrepreneur, a beacon of inspiration, but most of all, my accountability buddy. So, join me today in welcoming Shekinah. Shekinah, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you so much
I'm
for having
so
me.
well. I love the fact that you're feeling so great this morning. Yes. So, tell us, are you excited for today?
I'm thinking about this all day. I'm very excited. I'm very ready. I'm just happy to be in the place. Yes, ready. Excited.
Awesome.
Excited.
So, introduce yourself to our listeners, Jay.
Hello all. I am Shekinah, aka the Purpose Therapist. I am a therapist here in Birmingham, Alabama. I also run Purpose Joy, which is a platform dedicated to educating the community really and all things mental wellness, so everything from self-care to understanding ways to navigate your self-care journey, talking about imposter syndrome, cognitive distortions, conflict resolution, all that good jazz roll into one. And that comes from a various different ways and avenues, from our YouTube channel to Instagram posts to in-person events to opportunities like this. So yeah, that's it. That is me, Shekinah. Yes,
Hey,
happy
awesome.
to be here.
So, I know you mentioned all that stuff, but can you kind of walk us through what was your journey as a mental health professional and how you found your way into the field?
Okay, interesting process. Let me tell you, Sophie. So basically what happened was I my dad was a mental health professional and things like that. He was actually a mental health technician, and he was in mental health for years. He was a pastor, a youth pastor. He did prison ministry, all these different things. So I kind of like grew up watching it
That's
and had
awesome.
a passion for it because of that. So like counseling has always been like something that kind of was always ruminating in the back of my mind. But then as I got more into my adulthood, before mental health became like a real popular or more talked about topic, the idea was like, maybe that might not be the road you need to take, and you should probably do nursing instead. So I went down
Mhm.
that road. It was almost like a you know how God kind of has a plans for you, and that was like a very lengthy detour that I
Yep.
was on. I wasn't really successful going that route as I was in the nursing field. I dropped out of school for a while. Had to get myself and my spirit back right. Go back to school. I started doing teaching, and then from teaching, I became a counselor, and it's kind of been the goal ever since. So it's really been a purpose driven path for real. The whole brand, as far as like Purpose Joy is concerned, is because of the intentionality before that process. So
Yeah.
yes, the
I
the
really
journey
love
was
that.
thanks, man.
Yeah, you were going to say journey was what?
The journey was intense. It was intense, but
Yeah.
we
Yeah, it's so crazy because I remember we met when you were teaching, and
yes,
obviously that was one of your passions. You love the kids. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
think that was
yeah.
just like a journey where God was just having you trying to figure it out, but
Hmm.
also just showing how you can pour into the kids that you were teaching at that time.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so that's good. So as you are talking, I know when we were talking offline, we were talking about the pruning process,
Hmm.
and it sounds like you've gone through a process in your life. So can you tell us like what that pruning process looked like? Were there any warning signs that that came up, or that warning signs to look out for throughout the process?
Yeah, great question, Sophie. Honestly, there's okay, so I kind of think I have a couple different thoughts around the concept of pruning. So the first time I ever heard it, I was in church and things like that. But then another time more recently, I was in a session with my therapist, honestly, and that came up, that conversation of like what pruning looks like and things like that. And
Yeah.
so for me personally, um, even right now, you never stop learning, you never stop growing, you never stop doing any of those things. And the idea around pruning is you have to, like, the first step to it is you being willing and open to receive that process, be open to the process in general. You can't be so dedicated and focused or on the expectation of the end of something, or how something's supposed to work, or what something's supposed to look like,
Yeah.
to the point where you like don't allow yourself to grow and change.
Mm.
Growth and change throughout life kind of looked like spaces of feeling stagnant. Like as soon as you start to feel stagnant, okay, so there's something that needs to take a shift. I've gotten too comfortable. I used to feel like uncomfortability was a sign that like God wasn't in it, or that there was something wrong, right? But now I know that that's like my surest sign that God is in it, and I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing, because it's causing me to change for the better in order to make it happen and make it
Yeah.
work. So when it comes down to that process, that first step is like just being open to it. That second step is that once it starts to happen, allow it to change whatever spaces are in there, almost like opening your hand and giving it to God, in a sense of like not trying to take in and again project your idea of how it should work, or project your idea of how what it's supposed to look like. And then after that, be open to the idea of whatever path God is taking you for in that direction. Like, for to your point, Sophie, when I first started teaching, I didn't think that teaching would lead me to the space here. But even as I was teaching, remnants of things that I talk about now, remnants of purpose, remnants of like understanding what your mental health looks like, taking care of yourself. That was stuff I was telling my kids about. You know what I'm saying? So like these are things that are showing up again now. And in that pruning process, there's a different version of myself that's, I still see myself growing and I still see myself changing, but there's a different version of myself that exists. And it's like that awareness of knowing that that person exists. These visions and these goals that you have, they're not for no reason, but sometimes it's just a different version of you that has to sprout up in order for you to receive them.
That's good. And it's like even so beautiful that you were teaching the kids about mental health at that age, and having to like make them understand it at the level that they're at is just so beautiful. So like even when you go talk to an adult, now you're equipped. So I think that's like so cool as well. So I really love that. And then I guess for someone who wears multiple hats, how are you balancing all those, being a therapist, an entrepreneur, a friend, sister, and daughter throughout that?
I think one of the biggest things has been to understand, like, and this is something that I'm like learning right now, that if it's in front of me, it's meant for me, right? And then allowing myself to get the support that God has already provided. That's how I can show up. I can show up in a space of like being a friend, or being in a place of support for other people, and navigating that by understanding that it's not just, I'm not going to go be there for them. They're also in the same way being here for me. Like, it's a reciprocity thing. It's an ongoing cycle in that way. So when I show up at church and I have my obligations at church, or I have my obligations with my family, friends, things like that, I'm not just showing up because they need me to show up because they ask. I'm showing up because this also feeds my spirit. So it's like allowing myself to be a part of that that seed time and harvest cycle. Like, you sow those seeds of love, you sow those seeds of appreciation, and you literally get that back. And so I think that's the way that I've been able to kind of like operate and allow myself to be a part of that cycle.
Yeah, that's good. And because you wear multiple hats, how do you feel like the pruning process shows up in your business and your career path, especially?
Girl, I feel like every day I'm learning a different version of improvement that needs to happen. I'm learning something else. But the other side of the learning something else that needs to be improved is also like understanding, like, I might just low key know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? Like, over time, it's kind of been teaching me that too. So then, one of the biggest lessons, even like now within the last year, my word of the year this year was stewardship, right? And stewardship, one of the biggest things I thought, my initial intent around that was my finances. Like, let's get it together, Lord. I'm gonna be a good steward. That was my thought. But then in addition to that, now I'm realizing it's not just about, the money part of it. It's about my relationships with people. It's about my time that I'm spending. It's about all these other things too. So when we're talking about like my business and the pruning aspect of that part, it's how can you make the most of your time? How can you make sure that you're like subjecting yourself to being taught by other people when it comes to showing up in that way? How can you make sure that you're even able to, once you get some type of instruction about what you're supposed to be doing, act on it immediately? What does that look like? All these different things have been like a part of, I think, that pruning process, very much so putting behind my like Shekinah as I know it over here, and allowing myself to be molded and shaped into whoever it is that can conquer all these visions and goals that I'm thinking about. Like, there's another, I know that I can do it because I have it in me, but what version of me needs to be necessary for it? And that's been the motivating factor. Like, and I've seen the fact that I've had a little taste of the result of what it means for me to change my life. Like, for example, when I had dropped out of school, it was a wrap. Like, I was over it. I was going to work in retail for the rest of my life, and I was okay with that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but God just had something more. And so, like, understanding the fact that He has something more, and there's a version of you that exists that is adapted to this. Now, that 2013, 14 version of me and this version, we look the same, but it is night and day as far as how I move, what I do, the wisdom that I apply, and how I apply it, and the trust that I have in myself, and the trust that I have in the God in me. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All those things have to change. So just like it changed 10 years ago, for the next 10 years, I know I'm going to have to be somebody else for that too.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, how are you getting comfortable with the different versions of you? Because I know for me, I tell people all the time, the person that I was in college is not the person that I am right now. I have blocks now. But even deeper than that, just my mindset has changed. And you talk a lot about stewardship, like the way I even look at finances and shopping, all that has changed
Yeah.
now that I'm 26 compared to when I was like 20 and 21.
Yeah.
So I guess, how are you getting used to the different versions of yourself, and how are you allowing yourself to just embrace the journey of those, the Shekinah that was and the Shekinah that's becoming, and that
I
is.
think there's okay, you know how when the Bible says, I don't know, I didn't intend to go this route, but here we are. Okay, you know how the Bible says, I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb, right? And I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper, all these things, right?
Yeah.
I had to remember that if you said it in if it's in my spirit and things like that, when you first named Shekinah Joy Lee, when you first curated that, when you first imagined that, my parents, the circumstances, all that kind of stuff, you knew this whole entire thing, this whole
Yeah.
pathway. So wherever I'm at right now, you saw it. It's
Mhm.
ordained. And that makes me feel safe in it. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel as scary when I know somebody else has like literally written and directed this whole entire thing for me. All I'm doing is like acting it out if I want to be in process of his will. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like something else that allows it gives like another level of peace that says, Shekinah, these things that you're experiencing, you're not on your own because I ordained it. And because I ordained it, every resource you need for this version of you is there too. I've had to transition friendships, relationships, people that I love, situations and circumstances that like I just never imagined I would have to say no to and separate myself from for this version of myself. And the thing
Mhm.
is that just as I had to separate myself from one space, God already knew the people that would be in this new space. You see what I'm saying?
So good.
Authentic relationships exist in every phase of my life. And that's not to say that these friends were fake and these friends were better or anything like that. That's not to say that at all. But it is to say that there are versions of me that required a different type of watering for the seeds that were in me. And those people that were in that season with the watering isn't the same. You see what I'm saying? And so I have to
Mhm.
be able to accept that just the water just has to come from a different pot now. And
Ooh.
so as it comes from those different pots, like I accept it, I receive it, but then I also embrace it because like I'm not the only person I'm not the only person in this garden. I'm not the only person still soaking this up. Even to our point, like here recently, our accountability meetings and things like that, they grow me, my spirit. Like you don't understand. I was want to go to work for the day, all these things. And this is like a recent phenomenon, but this was
Yes.
exactly what I needed at this season of my life. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
God
Ooh.
willing, I'm blessed enough to continue to see and grow with people and see as they grow and like expand and things like that. There's people that even as when I was in that season of my life, when I had dropped out of school and stuff, 2013, 14 range, some of those relationships I have still to this day, and they've transformed.
Wow.
I didn't talk for 5 or 6 years or whatever the case. We weren't around each other for 5 or 6 years. They resurfaced and they're beautiful. So it's like
Mhm.
I trust God so much with me that I started to trust him even then with my relationships and trust him with whatever version of me that this is right now. Because I know that I know you know the desires of my heart. I know you know what I want. And clearly, if that's the case, then there's just like again to the point of like knowing what I want and knowing what that purpose looks like, there's a version of me that you also know has to get there. And
Yeah.
so in that place I have to get comfortable. I used to fight it. I used to try to be like, I don't feel like doing this, or I don't feel like doing that. Or I even used to try to hold on to relationships or situations that I thought would serve me and I needed them to make sure that I got to a certain space. But
Yeah.
that's not it. It's not by my might or my power or anything like that. It's gonna be strictly by his spirit at every step in every place. So I'm kind of like I was like, all right, I surrender, Lord. That's it. You got it. And that's it.
Yeah, that's like so beautiful because it just reminds me of like, hey, certain seasons require certain appetites,
Mm-hmm.
like your
Mm-hmm.
diet has to change. Like in one
Mm-hmm.
season, you could have been eating McDonald's, but
Mm-hmm.
now in this next season, you got to be eating kava. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But as you were speaking, I just kept on hearing you were relinquish control.
Yeah.
Sometimes that is so hard to do. I know for me, even in this season, right? Relinquishing control to God, but also like in my relationship as well. And
Mm-hmm.
just like saying, hey, there's a different version of me that God is demanding, but also that my partner is demanding of me as well,
Mm-hmm.
that is
Mm-hmm.
aligned with what God is demanding me. But in order for me to kind of get to the next level, there's a certain level of discipline, there's a
Yes.
certain level of a diet, there's a
Yes.
certain level of just my friendship circles has to change, my mindset has to change, the way I walk, the way I talk has to change. You know what I'm saying? And it's not
Yeah.
because it's not good for me, but it's the best decision for me at that moment in order to be the Sophie that I'm meant to be and that God created me to be. Um,
Yeah.
but it's hard relinquishing control. So tell me how you did it.
Girl, doing it. Not how I did it. It's doing it. I was it's interesting too because we had a really good conversation off camera like yesterday and stuff. And so as I was like meditating and driving home and all sorts of kind of stuff, I was thinking about some of the things, and one of them was like it's almost like, and I've heard my the church I go to, it's co-pastored by the pastor and his wife, and I've heard my pastor's wife talk about this before, and like I've asked him about it before, but and I said this to God before, but like the conviction in my spirit around it was different, and it was the idea like I just want to. I don't want my life to end without me getting a chance to experience literally everything that you have for me. And if that means that I have to like give up this and I have to give up that or whatever case, I kind of at this point I don't care. You know what I'm saying?
That's
Like
good.
I tried to like maneuver this in my way and maneuver that in my way, and I tried to juggle all the things, but that just is not realistic. And even it's interesting too in church yesterday my pastor was talking about the scripture and it was saying like it's not going to be, I know in your way you are inadequate, that is right with you by yourself, but it's like with me I'm the one that affirms you, I am the one that says, that certifies you and says that
Okay.
you are this, that you can do these things. And so with the reality of that being said, it's like almost like I had to do this thing, and it's a constant thing, it's a constant switch in the brain that says, okay, so what does it look like for me to just submit in a way that says I'm completely aware of like what I can do and what my power allows and stuff like that. And that's like another thing. It's like, you know, I'm ambitious, I can go get it, I'm a go getter. Yeah, you are, and that's lit. But
Yeah.
there's a whole other world that exists that God is tapped into that you're just not. You see what I'm saying? And the people that he knows, the rooms that he can be in, the relationships he can establish for you for no other reason but besides God told me to tell you blah blah blah, or God told me to show up to da da da, or God told me to do this for you. Like you just don't ever know. So it's like
Yes.
at this juncture, it's turning into I just like to be, I'm allow you to pleasantly surprise me. I'm gonna wake up, I'm gonna ask you, you know, your will be done. I hope I'm like, let me be of service to you today. Let me show up in the best way I can in
Yes.
accordance to what you want from me. And then at that point, the next step is okay, boom, we did that. I'm just let you do your thing. And when I tell you he be doing his thing, he be doing his thing. Stuff that
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense. But it's literally only when I now know that is only when I give him something to work with. And the something to work with now, it used to be a little bit of my time, or it used to be this gift, but not that one. It used to be this relationship, but not that one. Now at this juncture, it is the whole thing. You can have all
Mm,
of it,
that's good.
all of it. And I think it is in that literal surrenders from like the deep part of your soul outward, that is when he can come in and start really making changes that change your life. That's when he
Yeah.
can really start to say, oh, okay, you give me permission. It's like he has to have permission to come and blow your mind. He has to have permission to come and do whatever he wants. And so when
Yes.
I say like, oh, you ever heard that Jacayla Carr? I think that's her name. She'd be like, no, that's not it. Is it Tasha Cobb? It might be Tasha Cobb. I think it's Tasha Cobb. And she'd be like, um, uh, God, you can blow my mind. And then she'd be like,
Yes.
oh,
Tasha Cobb.
you know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Yes.
So like that I gotta give him permission first, and the permission is the reason why now we're here. And another thing too, I'm sorry, I got excited. My dad used to say this thing all the time, and it was that trust is built situation by situation.
Mm.
The fact that there's certain things in my life that I feel like God did or had I went through an experience just for the fact of being able to say, now watch me get the glory out of this anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yes.
now watch me show up for you. Like I see you, and yeah, you messed that up. Yeah, you play with it. Okay, but watch me get the glory out of this anyway. And so
Yes.
it's that trust of like situation by situation, he shows up. Situation by situation, he gonna show up and turn up on my behalf. Like so, it's like I don't have to. I'm good. I'm not gonna play. I'm just gonna do what I. And of course, you make mistakes, but even then, it's like the grace covers it. You see what I'm saying? I'm
Yeah.
just gonna keep every day try a little bit better, try
Yeah.
to do a little bit more, try to show up a little bit more sincerely, so that I can continue to watch you do your thing in my life.
Mm. That's so good. It's reminding me of the sermon that I heard yesterday from our pastor. But basically, as you walk, God will work, right?
Yes,
You take the first step, more will
yes,
be revealed to you.
yes.
And he even kind of talked about it from the standpoint of Moses as he was taking the Israelites to the Red Sea, right? Through there. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was either they were going to turn back and get captured by their enemies or move forward through that Red Sea.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just so crazy. It was just like, yo, like he's just waiting for you to take the next step
Yes,
and, build that trust with him, and life
yes,
is just going to unfold. And the more you be obedient, the more you'll see his hand work in your life.
yes,
So
yes, yes.
that's really beautiful. But man, you over here like preaching.
Well, I mean, because the energy is here. I think and I try not to. I'm not gonna say I try not to do it because I feel like that's a part of it too. I think a bigger part of it is the it's for the testimony at the end of the day, regardless. And it's like that's why I'm cool. I don't, especially platforms like this, I appreciate because it gives you the opportunity to be as vocal as you want to be about how good God has been. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And I'm not. I would shortchange myself, and then even the opportunity to be able to be a witness to that fact because somebody else got to know that that space is temporary. Whatever space that you're in, whatever bottom you think is here, it's temporary. God gets the glory out of all of it every single time if you allow it, if you surrender it. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah. And that's so
yes.
good because I know we were talking about this offline yesterday
Yeah.
too. Not letting, I mean, maybe this is going to be a separate podcast episode, but not letting your titles become your identity. And I think
Yeah.
times, I mean, I was guilty of this where I was walking in this identity that God never called me to be in. And even if He did call me to be in it, that isn't where my hope and my identity should lie in because He already gave me my identity way before I was already born.
Yes.
He gave it to me throughout just our journey together, and He like continues to reveal that. But again,
Yeah.
the more you start to step into these roles, whether it's like being a homeowner, I don't know, a wife, mother, all these different things, we start to think like that's the only thing we're capable of. When in reality, God just calls us to be so much bigger and better,
Yes.
and not to place our hope in those things because those
Yes.
things could be fleeting. And
Yes.
oftentimes in this society, we just get so caught up in our identities thinking that's who we are when it's in reality we're called to be so much more.
Mm-hmm.
When those things leave, what happens? You break
Mm-hmm.
down, you get depressed, and
Mm-hmm.
so you tend to see like a society that gets so caught up in that, and when it just gets taken away from them, that's when trouble comes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Girl, let me say something that came up to me. You're just saying that there's something so powerful about a person's name, right? So much so that like even in the Bible we see how like name changes equals life changes. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Abram to Abraham,
Yeah.
Saul to Paul, all these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I was in that space that was very, very low, I remembered my name. You see what I'm saying? And I remember, and that's literally all I had. So when we think about these titles and things like that, professional certifications or whatever the case, like what is that to a God that can do whatever? You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And so at the end of it, it's like your name, your root, like whose kid you are at the root of it, and everything else that holds true past whatever else and whatever circumstance you're whatever situation.
Yeah.
And if I it talks about like in I think it's like Romans 8:28 through 32. That's like looking my favorite scripture. But if you keep going all the way, the Romans 8:28 is one of my favorite scriptures. But if you keep going all the way through, it talks about so those that are called are people that are also justified, right?
Yeah.
And it's like justification for anything your purpose requires, you're justified already.
Mm.
It's kind of like what that meant to me. So as we're going through these different things, they can strip away your certifications, they can promote you, they can demote you, they can do whatever. Regardless of all those things, you're still justified. Justified for every vision, justified for every goal, every dream,
Yeah.
whatever. The justification is not by man. The validation doesn't come from man.
Yeah.
And so I think that while we're in this process, like you're talking about, the idea around separating yourself from the it can be real easy to do it too, but the idea of separating yourself from the validation, the position, the pedestals, all these things,
The
separating.
opinions.
That's what I'm saying. Thank you. The opinions too, all those things, put them all in a little box and put them over here in the corner and remembering who's and what you're supposed to be doing. My pastor says like this, he says to look upward instead of outward.
Yeah.
Always make sure you can kind of keep your head that way. Because this side to side stuff, this can get distracting and it can get misleading and it can make you feel like you're not attached like this. But as long as you keep your eyes to the hills when it comes to my help, that whole process, as long as you keep it that way, you'll end up remembering every single time, oh, I'm justified because he says so. I have
Exactly.
clearance for this because he says so. I have ability to do this thing because he says so. And if that's it, then who? If he before you, then who? You see what I'm saying?
Hey, that's so good. And then as you were talking, it reminded me of the story of Job. I guess how some people
Yeah.
pronounce it.
You know what you mean.
But this guy was rich and he
Yeah.
lost everything. He lost his wife, his kids, the land and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, regardless of however he felt, he still never denied God. He kept his eyes, kind of what you were saying, on the prize, regardless of however he felt. Even when, other people were telling him like, go curse your God, curse your God. like he kept his eyes on the prize and knew that regardless, even if God, like the same God that gave it to him, the same is the same God that could take away those things. So like even in our lives, just remembering that, you're gonna be pruned. So there are gonna be days where you're super high, there are gonna be days where you're super low, but at the end of the day, pass that test.
Yeah.
Pass that test, because at the end of the day, the next levels, you know, you'll be actually experiencing other similar tests, but you need to pass level 1 in order to get to level 2.
Yes.
Level 1 is going to be preparing you for level 2. And I think oftentimes for me, I just didn't really make the correlation between those two. But God calls us to just allow our eyes to be focused on Him and not anything else, not our titles, not our jobs, not the things that we're trying to do, for people and in our communities and all those different things as well. So, yeah, so beautiful.
Girl, yes. And this reminds me of another one too. When you were saying the thing about like how everything has kind of like prepared you for this space, and like those things, all those pieces matter. I was thinking about the story of David and Goliath, only because I just read part of it this morning, but the part that I read this morning was when he went to go talk to Saul, and he was like, "Hey, who is this Philistine over here doing all this extra stuff? Like, who is this? I got you. I'm gonna take care of it. When I had seen it, I'm gonna take care of it." So I was like, "What you mean? You're a shepherd boy. You don't know how to." He was like, I've already tackled a bear. I've already tackled a lion, and God gave me strength for that. So I know He got me strength for this." And so it's like, again, it was like his experiences with God being on his side, that trust that he built with Him, situation after situation, is what gave him that fuel to know that he can do whatever he wanted. And it's like no man could take that away.
Yeah, that's good, because then it just reminds you that even when you dropped out of school, even when you were a teacher, that you've had experiences where you've had to trust God in those seasons. So any season that is coming up for you, like, you'll be prepared because you've already gone through it. And you know that, hey, if God had me at my, in these moments where I didn't really know what to do and I still felt His peace, still felt that He was there, still was relying on Him, still was reading the Bible, like He's gonna bring me through even when success does come, even when I do have more titles, even when I do have more responsibilities. So I think that's like super beautiful. Just being reminded that, hey, like even as you journey off, well, not off course, but journey to do bigger and better things, that He is with you and that you're never gonna lose the experiences that you have with Him. You're always gonna remember. Yeah.
Yes.
That's good. So as we are wrapping up, I really want you to think about, what is one advice that you would like to share to some of the listeners who are going to be listening to this podcast about yourself?
I would say unconditional acceptance is your key to a limitless life. And I say that. I got you. So I think at the core of it, if we believe that all things are working for our good, if we believe that, we're not justified by anything else, you got to know too that like even those dark spaces, those parts, those things that you feel like ashamed of or uncomfortable about, or the things that you're nervous about, scared of, whatever, all of those different pieces, the more you can accept them, the more you can put fear away, put shame away, put guilt away, and go headstrong, focus to the next thing that God has for you, the next thing that your purpose has, the next business idea, next whatever the case. Put all that stuff behind there, because accept that as a process that you went through, as an experience that you have, but not your identity. That's not your identity. You're separate from those things, and your potential is not determined by those things either. So I think sometimes that we get to a point where we cannot accept certain parts of ourselves, or we feel like I have to change this. Once I get this together, then I'll be able to do that. Or once I get this part of myself together, then, or I can't do this because this is my problem. None of that matters. Just accept the whole thing, because He did already, accept the whole thing, and then go as full-fledged as you want to for whatever you believe your purpose is, because it becomes limitless as soon as you learn how to accept all parts of yourself. All of it works very good. All of it, every piece.
Yeah, that's good. And every piece makes up your story.
Yeah.
Because I know for me, there were different parts of my story that I didn't want to tell. Like parts of my story that, it's so funny, because when I went to therapy, I realized that it was suppressed thoughts and suppressed emotions that I've even blocked them out from my brain. So it took me some time to even like gather my thoughts around like, oh, this actually did happen. Like I was like, I didn't even remember it.
Yeah.
But as in your therapy role, you probably know more than that than I do. But it's just like allowing yourself to know that, hey, like every single thing that has happened to you happened for a reason.
Yeah.
And that at the end of the day, if you decide to share it or not share it, but your testimony can set people free.
Yeah.
And just allow people to kind of heal at the same time and allow you to heal too. I think a lot of the things that we don't talk about, the reasons why they are not getting healed is because we're not using our mouth and we're not speaking,
Right.
right?
Right.
We're not telling our truth.
Right.
So I think for me, that's like super key. Just speak up. Don't let the devil shut your voice down, but also don't let fear stop you from speaking up too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I know I said this was the last question, but this is the final one. Can you share a personal mantra or affirmation that has guided you through your journey?
The one most recently is that it won't be by my might, it'll be by his spirit.
Okay.
And that's been like the most there's a lot of things that I want for myself and for my future. There's a lot of things I'm working on. And even now I do a lot of stuff. We talked about the mini hats. It is the mini hats. It's too many hats. And I'm praying for one day not to have to be so many hats.
Yeah.
But even then, whatever I'm doing, however I can navigate all these things and manage them and have them all working in harmony is literally going to be by his spirit, and it won't be by my might. So kind of like allowing myself to be in surrenderance of that too, of my ambition, surrender my ambition, because that's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to do. But realizing that it's okay for me to rest in that because it's not going to be by my might. It's okay for me to say no to stuff because it's not going to be by my might. It's okay for me to keep boundaries because it's not going to be by my might. It's going to be by his spirit.
That is so good. By his spirit. I think Tasha Cobb has a similar
She
song.
does, and she does. Yes, she does.
I was like, I would try to sing it, but you ain't gonna do that.
Yeah, it's her and Kiki Shear, and it's beautiful. Yeah,
it's so good. But Shekinah, I truly appreciate you for sharing your wisdom with so many of our listeners today, and I hope that they got something out of it. I know we kind of bounced around between different topics and all those different things, but truly believe that's maybe what the Lord wants us to talk about. Yeah. And hopefully there's somebody else on the other end who could find this as a very encouraging conversation, but also an honest one and a fruitful one for them in their lives as well. So ladies, I hope that you guys just remember that the pruning process is both in your favor. It happens for a reason, but also it happens because God wants to take you to another level that you probably never even imagined for your life. So many people get stuck in being the version that they were in the past. They get stuck in the versions that they were in the present and never decide to move forward. But at the end of the day, I believe that God is calling us to grow so that we can be the best selves, but also so that when we decide to leave this earth, we've left with every single thing that he's deposited in us, right? We don't want to look back at that. Well, we're not going to look back at the dash, but maybe. But when people look at that dash in our lives, at least let's make sure that, hey, we've accomplished the things that God has told us to do, and the things that, he's birthed in us, as opposed to kind of, leaving this earth and feeling like you haven't done much. So that's kind of like, I guess, my ending there, but just go after your goals and enjoy the process. Sometimes it's going to be up, sometimes it's going to be down, but at the end of the day, like, it's all for your good. Just don't stay down, just keep going. But until next time, ladies, keep shining and always remember that you have the power to thrive, even if you are in the midst of a pruning process. It's going to be for your benefit and, God's glory at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shekinah, is there any last comments?
I'm just so thankful. This was great. Thank you so much for the opportunity. This was amazing. And this is great. Thank you.
Hey. Bye, ladies. It's good speaking with you guys. See you guys next time.